Hi, my name's David Bigger, and I'm going to be your instructor for this IT Fundamentals course. So let's talk a little bit about me first. Well, what do I like to do? Well, I love to go outside and play with my kids. I like to try to play golf. I do like to read and learn more on information technology on IT. I'm always on IT forums or some type of communication, chat rooms, instant messaging, talking with my peers. I like to try to build computers and play around with new software. And that's all we're going to talk about in this class is software and what we can do with this software and the computers that we need to put this software on. I like to work outside with my hands. I like to work out in the yard when the weather's pretty enough to do that. And I like to build things around the house. And I have to thank Pinterest for that and my wife because she's always on that website looking for things for me to do to improve the way our home looks. Now, a little bit about my work history. Currently, I'm an independent contractor doing IT training into IT consulting, and I do a little bit of tech support on the side, though I usually do consulting and training more than the tech support anymore. Before that, I've been doing that for about a year, but before that, I spent 5 years training the United States military, United States Army. I would travel all around the USA, different countries, different Army posts, training the military on IT certifications, cybersecurity, and things like that. I have 18 years in IT professionally. Before I worked for the United States military, I worked for a community college for a while, and then before that I worked for a public school system. So I've been in information technology for a while. I do have 11 years of classroom instruction with the United States military and with working at the community college because I would teach part-time at the community college as well. And then I have 5 years of online instruction through the community college now. So, I moved from where I used to work at the community college and now I do online classes for them. I also hold 20 professional certifications ranging from CEH, that's Certified Ethical Hacking, to CCNA, our Cisco Network Associates. And from A+ to, say, Windows 7. So I've got a lot of certifications. I know how to take these exams. I know how to read for them. So I've got everything from CompTIA to Microsoft to ITIL to Cisco to EC Council. So I kind of ran the gambit there when it comes to these certifications. So let's talk about the IT fundamentals, the course that you're in now, the FC0-U51 course. Now, the CompTIA IT Fundamentals Certification Exam is designed to show that a successful candidate, which is going to be you, has certain knowledge. And we're going to cover all of these base points that CompTIA points out that is important for you to know for this exam. So we're going to identify and explain basic computer components. We're going to get in there and look at these components, at the motherboard, hard drives, and the hardware of the systems. We're going to see how to set up a basic workstation. We're going to step through on hooking it up, installing software, adding, removing features, putting applications or programs on this computer. So we're essentially going to build this computer from the ground up. We're going to conduct basic software installations like I just mentioned. Now, I'm not talking about the operating systems when it comes to this point. We're talking about applications that you can go buy at the store or applications that you may download, say, from the internet, and we're paying for them and they're going to be licensed. We're going to talk about basic network connectivity, how to get that system that we're going to set up, we're going to put the operating system on it, how do we get that guy to talk to all the other things inside of our network? Doesn't necessarily have to be computers nowadays. Our computers will talk to printers. They'll talk to TVs nowadays. They'll talk to your gaming station, your Xbox or your PlayStation 4, whatever you may have at your house. We can take these systems and network them, allow them to communicate. So we're going to talk a little bit about network connectivity and how important it is to get out there to the cloud, to the internet that everybody loves to surf on. We're going to look at some compatibility issues. Like if I have a Linux system and I have a program for it, can I take that Linux system, let's say I have 10 licenses for it, can I take that software and put it on, say, a Windows system? Is it going to work? Can I take the hardware out of one machine? I may have an older PC laying around my house. Can I take that video card and put it in another system? Is it going to be compatible? So we're going to look at some of the differences there. And then we're also going to talk about identifying and preventing basic security risks. We want to make sure that we are staying safe. Security is probably the #1 field I'm in because I am a cybersecurity professional, so we're really going to hit hard on those security risks. Now, if you take a look at this slide, this is the IT fundamentals domain breakdown. And I took this straight from CompTIA's website because, well, they're the vendor for this certification. And you can see there are 5 domains that we are going to cover. We're going to talk about software, hardware, security, networking, and then finally cover up or round out with some basic IT literacy. And you can see the percentage of the exam per domain. And they're all pretty equal. Maybe networking is getting slighted just a little bit with only 16% there, but most of them are right in the 20% range. So there's not one domain that we're really going to hit on a lot harder than the other ones, but the 24% on domain 5. I think that's important because it kind of rounds out the other 4 domains that were talked about. It's going to pull from pieces that we've talked about when it comes to software and hardware, networking and security, and show you how to bring all of that together. So I think that's why they gave it a 24% there, because it's a little bit of everything. And we're really going to focus on that one. If there is one that we're going to just really slow down and take our time on, will be that basic IT literacy domain. So that software domain, what are we going to cover there? Well, we're going to look at common operating systems. We're going to look at their features. We're going to look at some of their functions. We're actually going to open up some virtual machines, some images that I have on a system, and look at different operating systems. We're going to look at a Linux system. We're going to look at a Chrome OS and Windows. We're going to look at a Mac operating system a little bit. We're going to look at common programs, applications, and their purposes. So all about, again, software in this domain. We're going to look at software management best practices. Do we even need that software? What if we don't even use this software? Sometimes you'll buy a brand new computer. If you don't build it from the ground up, it may already have software installed on that computer. We want to get rid of that. We want to see how we can uninstall some of these features, these unneeded features that you may not want. We're going to look at some alternative technologies. Look at their purpose, say like cloud computing or virtualization, like I mentioned just a second ago. Very powerful technologies, very up and coming, and this course would be a good stepping stone into those more advanced technologies that we're going to talk about just briefly in this domain. And then we're going to look at the basic software features and functions of some wireless devices when it comes to software. So we're not talking about hardware just yet. That's domain number 2. So this is all about software. In the second domain, we're going to talk about hardware. We're going to look at basic wired and wireless peripherals and their purpose. Keyboards, mice, printers, scanners, monitors for that matter could be wired or wireless peripherals. We can have a projector, a wireless projector, and project onto the wall, say we're giving a meeting. We can have the presentation on our phone or on our tablet and project that or wirelessly project that to a projector. I guess project's not the right word. We're going to wirelessly send that to the projector and have that projected on the wall for everybody in the boardroom to see, just as an example. We're going to look at the different computer connector types. We're going to look at lots of pictures when it comes to these connector types because just describing them is not going to really do it justice. You're going to need to know for this IT fundamentals, you're going to need to know if you stick your hand in a bucket and you pull a wire out and you look at the connector, you need to be able to look at that connector and say, well, that's DVI or that's HDMI or that's USB or VGA or, well, that's a power cord. Just some simple things there, but we're going to take a look at all of those, so don't worry. And then finally, in the hardware domain, we'll identify the purpose of the internal computer components, like the CPU, the hard drive, cooling fans, cooling fins. We'll look at some RAM chips. We're going to have, again, lots of pictures, lots of things to see when it comes to the hardware, because just me describing, say, a hard drive, well, it's a metal box about this big. That doesn't do you much good when it comes to the test Or when you really get out there and say you're getting your job, your IT job, your entry-level job, if you're moving in that direction, and you say, well, I'm looking for a metal box because I need to replace the hard drive, that's not going to do you a lot of good, right? So again, lots of pictures, lots of good things to see when it comes to this domain. Then domain number 3, the security domain. And like I said, I'm going to try to thread myself back. I am a cybersecurity professional, so this one really intrigues me. So the first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to security is some basic security threats. We're going to look at the bad guys. How are they coming into your system? How are they coming into your network? What can we do to keep them out? What can we do to protect ourselves? We'll look at some security best practices on, well, what does everybody else do? What's working for company A? What's working for company B? What's working for individual A and B? It doesn't necessarily have to be companies or organizations. And we're going to look at some web browsing best practices. I'll get it out in a second. This one is super important because this is a very good vector, a way that the bad folks, the attackers, they come into your system. Because we're all online nowadays. We're all on the internet with our phones, with our tablets, with our laptops, with our desktop PCs. All of this equipment, we have it all networked. We have it all communicating. So the best way to get in is web browsing. We're going to show you how to have best practices on what to do, what not to do, what to look for, and try to be safe when we're out there on the internet. And then in the next domain, networking. First, we're going to look at setting up and configuring a SOHO router, wired and wireless. Now, SOHO, that's small office, home office, S-O-H-O. So we're going to see how we can set up these routers. And you may have already done this. You can go to the store, buy a wireless router, whatever brand you want, and take it home and hook it up, and it will work. Now, it might not be secure. It might not function 100% exactly the way you want it to, but it will function. You can get online, but it may not be password protected, it may not have quality of service and things like that. You may not have file sharing set up or wireless printing and so on and so forth, but it will get you online. We're also going to compare and contrast cellular, wireless, and wired data connections. Which one's better? Which one gives us more flexibility? Which one's more secure? So we're going to look at those different types and see the differences of those and the likenesses as well. Because we know we're networking. We want to share data. We can share data with all of those technologies, but there are some slight differences. And then we're going to look at different methods of sharing and storage and how we want to share our data, where we want to store our data. Do you want to put it in the cloud, say? Or do you want to have a network attached storage in your small business or in your home office? I know a lot of guys, I kind of hang with some geeks, but they've got network storage in their homes. I have network storage in my home. So we'll talk about having storage and sharing of this information through our networking. And then finally, like I said, we're going to wrap up the whole course with a basic IT literacy domain. We're going to perform steps to set up that basic workstation. We have to talk about all the pieces before we can set this up, in my opinion. We could start with this chapter, honestly. We could set a desktop up here, and I could show you how to plug things in. I could show you how to power it on. I could show you how to do all of this stuff, but you're not going to know what that stuff is. That's why we need to talk about operating systems and applications and all the hardware components that are going to be inside of that computer. So the first thing we're going to talk about in this domain is setting up that basic workstation. We're going to explain basic methods of navigating an operating system. And honestly, we're going to look at this a little bit in the software domain as well. But in this domain, we're going to see how to really get into this operating system that we're going to set up, because remember, we're going to set up this basic workstation, and we'll probably put some type of Windows or maybe a Linux version on there, or maybe we may do both. And we can get in and set that information up, configure our operating system the way that we want it. Maybe background pictures or background images. Do we want a screensaver? How do we want the icons, and so on and so forth. We're going to implement basic support concepts. You know, maybe you are getting into IT, which is outstanding, by the way. but you're getting into IT. Maybe you're looking for an entry-level help desk position or entry-level networking position, or maybe you're it. Maybe you started your own business and you need some background information on IT because you need to be able to take care of your stuff. You need to think about basic supporting concepts. Where are you going to start when that help desk call comes in? We're going to talk about like the KISS method, and we'll go over what that stands for a little bit later. But, if your computer won't come on, don't necessarily jump to, well, the power supply went out. Maybe they kicked the power strip off. Maybe it became unplugged. You never know. So we'll talk about some of those support concepts. We're going to talk about backing up concepts, basic backup concepts. We won't really get into, say, server or enterprise level backups. We're going to talk about simple backups because everybody should be doing backups when it comes to your data. You hear about things all the time. I'm on Facebook like everybody else. Every once in a while I'll see somebody I graduated with. I lost all of my data. I've lost all my pictures. I've lost all my videos. My computer crashed or something like that. My first question is, do you have a backup? I can help you with this. And most of the time, I'd say 98% of the time, they say, no, I don't have a backup. Well, if you don't have a backup, if you don't copy that data off, say, weekly, daily, that's probably a little bit much for most home users, you can't get that information back if something catastrophic happens to your computer. So we're going to talk about backups. And then we're going to talk about the importance and the impact of environmental and safety concepts. And this is kind of where the IT fundamentals is bleeding over a little bit to CompTIA's green technology certification, IT green, and where we're trying to take care of the planet. So what we're going to do is look at this. Like, for example, you don't want to take your big CRT, the TV monitor looking things we used to have, not the flat panel monitors, and chunk those into the dumpster. They've got chemicals in them that is not good for the environment, just as an example. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff as well in this fifth domain of basic IT literacy. So what can you expect? Now this course will consist mainly of lecture and discussions on all those topics that we just talked about. So you're going to see a lot of me, you're going to hear a lot of me when it comes to this information. Now I am following along with some PowerPoints that I've created, some screenshots. And every once in a while you'll get to see those screenshots. You'll get to see the PowerPoints that I have created, especially in the hardware section where I told you we're really going to focus on those pictures because you're going to need to know what those ends of those cables look like. And then we're going to have some demos for some of the topics, like the software installation, the operating system installation, how to navigate around your operating system, how to look at some of those features. So we will have some demonstrations as well. So, are you ready? So if you're ready, let's get started on our first topic, and that's going to be software.